You are about to embark on a journey of discovery through the rich and fascinating history of classical Greece. You'll become fully immersed in the painstakingly detailed world built for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which you are free to explore at your own pace, without any danger or time pressure. For a directed experience, take one of the many guided tours curated by prominent historians and archaeologists. Along the way, exchange words with some of Greece's most famous historical persons. The classical Greece you are about to explore is at the peak of its glory. This period is synonymous with grand accomplishments of the physical and the mental. Architectural marvels which still stand today dot its landscape, while towering achievements in philosophy, political systems, and art still influence our modern society in profound ways. We hope you become engrossed in the dazzling riches of ancient Greece and welcome you to your visit.
Here, visitor, and welcome to this sacred site. Delphi is an amazing place to visit if you're looking for information. I've come here on several occasions in search of answers to some particularly puzzling questions, and sometimes I even found them. This is Delphi, home of the renowned oracle. Greeks considered it the navel of the world. Pilgrims and kings journeyed here from all over Greece and beyond, seeking advice from Apollo through the voice of his interpreter, Pythia. During your visit, you will experience the sanctuary through a pilgrim's eye and discover how important oracles and prophecies were to the people of Greece. Now, go off and begin your pilgrimage. I will be waiting for you at the end of your visit.
On their journey to the Temple of Apollo, pilgrims walked this sacred path up Mount Parnassus. The summer sun beat down hot on their backs. Along the way, they took in the magnificent monuments, treasuries, and statues that adorned the road. These landmarks were tokens of people's reverence for the oracle's benevolence. All were dedicated to Apollo, and most were offered by cities to commemorate military victories. The monuments represented not only their donors' piety, but also their power and wealth. The sanctity of Delphi has endured to the present day, and visitors still take this very same route.
Δέξου την καινή ημών προσφορά. Εκλιπαρούμε του ελέου σου δια την του ηχθείος προσφορά και του χειριδίου ήμι. Ήθε τούτο ευχαριστήσεσαι. Ήμι.
One of the most impressive dedications to Apollo came from the Cnidians, a Greek population that colonized the island of Lipari, north of Sicily. The story behind this dedication is notable. The Cnidians were at war with the Etruscans in the Tyrrhenian Sea. Seeking a good omen, the Cnidians consulted the oracle, and following her advice, they successfully captured 20 enemy ships. To thank Apollo, they offered the god the same number of statues as ships seized.
Ζεύς ασφαλώς γέιδε τούτο και δε δωροδόκητε, αλλά κατέκρινε αποστερήν της ανθρώπης το μυστήριο του πυρός.
Ναι, οι θεοί βασιλεύουν συχνά.
Όποτε απεπειράτη θεωρήσω μία κάμιλο, λέγον είναι περσιτόν υπάρει. Ως διαφόρωση, ατεωρών βίουν και σε αλόχων. Βεβαιότατα. Ο εμός αδελφός λέει.
Δεν τρων έξω οι πυρός.
Όμως γάμος εστί επιχείρησης μας.
Ήκουεσαν ότι η θυγάτηρ μου εκληρονόμησε νοικίαν και δούλους παρά θείο αυτής.
Πως ήθις καπρικό έσονται τον Θεός.
Πού χαρεστών οι εστί.
Μόνον όταν το επιχείρημα δομείται πιστικών, τότε δίνεται αν κερδάνε εν ζήτημα. Ανατρέχομεν στους τραγικούς της δομής ταύτης ένεγεν.
Next to the Naxian Sphinx stood a simple structure to display offerings from the Athenians, most of which were spoils of war. In particular, these offerings, called ex-votos, were prows of sunken Persian ships. The Athenians built the portico after their naval victory over the Persians in 478 BCE.
Το αυτό και τους δούλεις. Τους νέους διδάσκεστε τα επιμηχανήματα αυτής, η ναή της η αναγνωρίζειν ταύτα και τους σόφρονας πολίτας διεπιθεάζειν τους θεούς. Θεοκλητός η ούτως ώστε η πατήρ της προϋποπτεύει μη ο αρτιγενήσιος να τραφείς γίνει τραγωδοποιός. Κάλλιον έσεστε εκθέτην τούτων επί των κρυμνών την αποθάνει. Οι χαρακτήρες εν τες τραγωδίες προαιρούνται του ύψους της διανοίας ένεκεν. Τραγωδία εκλαμβάνει τας ιστορίας αυτών και χρήτε ταύτες τραγουδοποιού ένεκεν. Ούτως ουκ αντιμιμείται τα σπουδαίας αξίας των ιστοριών τούτων. Τουναντίον, επιμηχανάτε ταύτας και προσμυθοποιεί. Αποκρύπτει την προαίρεση αυτού εν το ενδύματι της συγκατανεμωμένης ιστορίας. Προς επιδείκνυση σατανικά ψευδολογήματα, άνευ ηθικών απειλήσεων. Του τρόπο, κατά προδίδωση του συμπολίτας αυτού. Η τραγωδία διαφύρει.
Όποτε αποπειράς το μια κάμιλο, λέγον είναι περσιτόν υπάρει.
Τα ημάτια διερριγμένα.
Κρατεά και τρομερή Αθηνά.
Once arriving before the temple, pilgrims wishing to consult the oracle had to first pay a tax. This tax gave them the initial right to approach the altar of Apollo and make an animal sacrifice to the god. But before proceeding to the Pythia, the preliminary ritual had to succeed. If the animal reacted favorably and showed signs of acceptance to the god, it was sacrificed, and the pilgrim would be allowed to enter the temple to question the Pythia.
Καταδικαστέα ημίνε ηθικέ αξίε το τραγωδοποιό. Τραγωδοποιός έστι βλέπτης, ως δια των
Και ο
υποκριτών
ίνος
κλέπτης
ή εκ του
την χάριν του
πατρώου
έθνους.
αμπελώνος.
Κύκλωθεν των
Ευλογημένη
τραγωδών
Αθηνά.
εξαπόρων.
At last we arrive at the temple of Apollo, where the oracle relayed her prophecies. The temple was the final destination of those seeking an audience with the Pythia, and its appearance matched the majesty of its purpose. Atop its imposing columns, the structure's pediments displayed famous mythological scenes, sculpted by the renowned Greek artist Antenor. But as grand as the temple looked from the outside, it paled in comparison with what happened within.
Οι χαρακτήρες εν τες τραγωδίες προαιρούνται του ύψους της διαρκείας ένου. Τραγωδία εγκλαμβού.
Η τραγωδία κινείται μεταξύ τριών βαθμίδων. Δύσιν εκτιμήσε δεόντως το απροσδόκητον του πελάτου και τεθεμελιώστε τα δεδομένα και μετά.
Prophecies were given in the most restricted part of the temple, the Aditon, by a chaste woman known as the Pythia. Before delivering prophecies, she first purified herself with water, then burned laurel leaves and barley flour to begin the ritual. Finally, while seated on a tripod surrounded by offerings, the Pythia delivered Apollo's messages. Her words were often strange and indecipherable, and required further interpretation by the temple's priests. Despite much research, the exact causes of the oracle's behavior while prophesying are debated to this day.
Μεγαλώνυμε και πολιώνυμε, φωνία και θηροκτώνε, φυλαγρώτη και λυτηρία, δρυμονίτης και βρωτών ελπίς, ελθέ, η κατέχεις ωραίων δρυμούς, ελθέ θεά σώτηρα, άγουσα καλούς καρπούς από γέης ειρήνη.
Myths say that while searching for an oracle who could impart their words to mortals, Apollo established a sanctuary on Mount Parnassus. Apollo took over this site by slaying its sinister guardian, the snake-like Pytho.
Μεγαλώνυμε θεά, αγλαότιμε, τεχνών μύτηρ, πολύολβε, πολυλίστη λυτήρα κακών, ιστρούσα βρωτών ψυχάς. Σύγχαια, το σιρήνου πολύολβε.
Κρατεά και τρομερή
Your visit is complete. I hope you now understand how important this sanctuary was, and how it affected the lives of people both in the Greek world and beyond its borders. To be honest, I could speak about Delphi all day. But what would you like to do now? Of course. Follow me.
Το κρέας γίγνεται θευ κάκιον και πολλό κάκιον έτη. Έκαστος κρεοπόλης λέγει το αυτό.
Οι αγρότες φοβούνται μη φέρουσιν τα επόλια σφών εις τα σωμούς της πόλης. Κρεοπόλε, αφεαυτούς δι, η ένεση πίσχα. Πανταχού συμμορία υπάρχουσιν. Εφαρμούσι και διούσι αγρικίες και κόμμας. Δεόμεθα πιστοφόρων. Είδα την όστη.
Greetings, wanderer, and welcome to the port of Piraeus. Piraeus is one of the busiest, most important ports in the Greek world. Money flows through here like a river that runs all the way to Athens. Acting as a port for Athens, Piraeus welcomed merchants, goods, and travelers from all over the world. It was a central part of Athens' economy, but it was also fortified enough to protect the city's considerable fleet. When you finish exploring the port, find me, and we will talk further.
Αλλά όμως τιμήσετε πολλούς. Οι νήσοι των Ιχθυοπολών ενοικιάστηκαν κατά τα
Piraeus, a peninsula southwest of Athens, became the city's main port after the politician Themistocles encouraged the development of its natural harbors. These developments led to the gradual abandonment of the older harbor of Phaleron. Piraeus's fortifications were further developed by Cimon and Pericles, along with the long walls which ensured goods could still be moved during sieges. Piraeus was divided into three main sectors: the military port, the Emporion, and the residential area. By the 5th century BCE, it had become not only Athens' naval headquarters, but also the mercantile center of the Mediterranean.
ώστε ούν έπιλον η νοτισή εις απλούς
οράσεις μεταλλών, όσο ό,τι ένες της αγοράς, τόσο καλόν όσο πανταλόν.
Εόποια βλακία που προείπων σύπερια.
Piraeus's development during the 5th century BCE attracted a large population. Many craftsmen, merchants, bankers, sailors, and ship owners moved to the port in great numbers. The population was a mix of Greek citizens, foreign visitors, and immigrants known as metics. The variety of the port's inhabitants gave Piraeus a cosmopolitan atmosphere. Most of the residents were involved in trade, but others worked on shipbuilding or in larger-scale industries like shield factories. Piraeus's commercial focus offered many opportunities for those seeking to increase their wealth and status. One such rags-to-riches tale is that of Passion, a slave who eventually became a citizen and earned a fortune thanks to his bank and his shield factory.
Ώστε εις τα άπαντα στους φέροντας άπαντα, λέξωσε την εμή επιθυμία και εις αύριον εγγύησε ότι σχίσες τα σκύρα.
Ο εμός εξάδελφος καινοτόμος τα μάλα
αενάος,
μηχανοποιός το στρατό, είναι επέστρεψη στους ιδεότεροι γεωργοί.
Μη πολίτησος απόλυσε απαξάπατα. Μη υπόμνησης της...
Piraeus was a demi, or district, of Attica. Because of its size, function, and varied population, it had a much more complicated administrative structure than other demes. Above all, Piraeus was closely monitored and controlled by the Athenian assembly due to its importance to the city. Within the port, there were two separate categories of trade: international trade, which took place in the Emporion, and retail trade, which was managed by Kapoloi in Piraeus's agora.
Ετοίμητε 10 δραχμών. Μη οράς ως πικραντικός γιατί...
The Emporion was a commercial port dedicated to trading goods from overseas. All international transactions were required to be made within its limits and needed to be exclusively wholesale. Elected magistrates managed all business and laws in the port. Meanwhile, port authorities known as epimeletes oversaw trade and took care of the regulation of prices. This was an especially crucial duty, as the amount of supplies and goods could fluctuate wildly based on factors like bad harvests or lost cargo. Common products sold in the Emporion included vegetables, fruits, fish, leather, timber, marble, metal, weapons, and ceramics. According to Hermippos, Athens was also wealthy enough to afford the finest goods from all over the world, including figs from Rhodes, almonds from Thassos, oil from Samos, and wine from Chios. Taxes were collected on all merchandise that came into the Emporion, which provided Athens with a major source of income.
Όπισθεν του πολιτηρίου ευρύσεις την μάνδραν μετά της ύλης.
Ανυπόφορον εστίν ώρα.
After arriving in the Emporion, merchants set up samples of their goods in a display area called the Deigma. This was where citizens and foreigners gathered to officially make their deals. And almost all merchandise that came into the Emporion was traded within the area. The Deigma was under constant supervision by magistrates, who negotiated price control with the importers. They would occasionally give special privileges to those who agreed to sell at lower prices. These privileges ranged from tax exemptions to specially reserved seating in the theatre. Piraeus was a deme, and as such was supervised by a magistrate called the Demarchos. While most demarchoi were chosen locally within their deme, Piraeus was appointed directly by Athens, so the city could better monitor its commercial interests. In fact, matters regarding the Emporion, the military harbour, and the grain trade were regularly debated and decided by the Athenian assembly. Transactions within the Piraeus were supervised by metronomoi. These were magistrates responsible for keeping track of weights and measures. They made sure merchants' measurements were always accurate to prevent bad deals and scams. Even though Piraeus would eventually develop into a city in its own right, it always remained under the control of Athens. A commercial tax of 2%, or a pentecost, was placed on all cargo entering and leaving Piraeus. The tax was collected by a group of 5 people called Pentekostologoi. According to Andocides, this position could be bought for the hefty sum of 30 talents, or 180,000 drachmae. However, most of these officials made a profit of up to 6 talents, making the job very lucrative. While merchants were responsible for setting the value of their goods, Pentekostologoi had the power to challenge the value if they saw fit. Furthermore, merchants were required to register with these officials before they could transport, display, and sell their goods. Overall, this system provided Piraeus, and by extension Athens, with a tremendous amount of money. The sale of grain was overseen by special magistrates called sitophilakes. Since some Greek cities had a grain deficiency and relied heavily on imports, these officials were extremely important. Their duties encompassed all aspects of grain commerce, including price control and profit margins, to ensure Athens remained well-fed. This is no surprise. Grain was so important to Athens that 2/3 of all stocks were required to be transported and sold at the city's agora by law. According to Demosthenes, the significance of the Sitophilakes was such that if they failed in their duties, they faced the death penalty.
Είναι ωραία, μηδενός αντιτίμου σχεδόν. Κολλήσει ταύτα το αμαξοστασίο.
The Emporion operated on a foundation of credit and loans. Overseas commerce was handled by two types of tradespeople. Emporoi transported cargo in borrowed ships, while Naukleroi were ship owners who moved goods on their own vessels. Elsewhere in the Emporion were bankers and accountants who arranged loans and kept track of incoming and outgoing ships. Emporoi and Naukleroi financed their maritime voyages with these loans, which often had a high interest rate due to the dangers of sea travel. Emporoi used the loans to pay for both the cargo and the right to a ship, while Naukleroi only had to pay for their loans, and interest were repaid upon a ship's return to port. However, in the event of a catastrophe such as a shipwreck, the merchant and ship owner were released from their obligations, and the losses were transferred to the lender.
You've returned. I hope you enjoyed your stroll through the port. Piraeus was important to Athens' commercial interests, but it eventually came into its own as a vibrant and bustling port. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Of course. Follow me, wanderer.
Welcome, traveler, to the sanctuary of Asclepios, a place of rest and healing. The sanctuary of Asclepios is an amazing place, even for those with only a passing interest in medicine. It was a fascinating location, combining the mystical, religious, and scientific. And if someone happened to pass out, they'd luckily be surrounded by skilled physicians. This is the sanctuary of Asclepios, the god of medicine. It was here that the sick and weary came, seeking cures for their ailments. Sometimes the medical practitioners provided the cures, and sometimes the healing came from the gods themselves. This tour will help explain the inner workings of the sanctuary, as well as the unique way the Greeks approached medicine. I hope you enjoy yourself. I'll be waiting for you at the end of your visit.
The ill and infirm came to this sanctuary to pray and offer sacrifices to Asclepios, the god of medicine. According to myth, Asclepios was once a mortal physician who eventually became a god. He had many sanctuaries across Greece, but the most famous was in Epidaurus. When pilgrims passed through the entrance of the sanctuary, they could read this inscription: "When you enter the abode of the god which smells of incense, you must be pure, and thought is pure when you think with piety." Medical steles constituted a sort of hub between medicine, religion, and the divine. They were slabs with inscriptions that praised Asclepios' virtues and merit and described his methods of healing. The inscriptions relayed the dreams patients had within the abaton, one of the most important buildings in the sanctuary. The steles outlined the patient's name, their disease, and how they were cured by Asclepios. They were probably written by the sanctuary's priests, or at least under the priest's supervision. Asclepios was a complex deity. In addition to being a god, he was also a trained physician and disciple of the centaur Chiron.
Σύ βασανιώσε, διατάξω τους αλήτας δώσυνσι εν ισχυρόν πλήγμα, τιμωρήσου άπαντας, ουδεμίαν απίθεια, ουδεμίαν. Τηράτε την τάξη, ότε είναι εν στρατεία εξεγύμναζον τους αρίστους, απαιτώγουν σε βασίκιστον.
Τα σωδίνας ως περοναύτης περιμεμά τη θεία της χιλιάς. Αλλά το αναπτύξει.
Σκόρα καλπετεύεις.
Οι χαρακτήρες αυτές της τραγωδίας προαιρούνται του ύψους της διανοίας Σένεκερ. Τραγωδία εκλαμβάνει τα ιστορίες αυτών και χρήσε ταύτας τραγωδοποιού ένεκα. Ούτως ούτε τιμημείτε τα σπουδαία αξίες των ιστοριών του. Αντίον, επιχάρετε ταύτας και προσμυθοποιεί.
In ancient Greece, religion was inseparable from rites, processions, and sacrifices. This was no different in Epidaurus, and visitors to Asclepios' sanctuary needed to prepare themselves accordingly. Pilgrims cleaned themselves in order to be pure, then offered Asclepios food like honey cakes, cheesecakes, baked meats, and figs. The food was placed on the sanctuary's holy table, where it was presumably later taken by priests. After the preliminary offerings, visitors were allowed to enter the abaton, where they would hopefully encounter Asclepios in a dream. Medical steles also mention that healed patients sometimes gave additional offerings to Asclepios as thanks for being cured.
Αυτό και της δούλης. Τους νέους τη διδάσκεστε τα μηχανήματα αυτής, την αρχή η διεσία να γνωρίζει ταύτα. Σόφρονας πολίτας διεπιθεάζει τους θεούς. Θεοκλητώσει ούτως ώστε η πατήρ της προϋποκτέλει μη αρτηγενής Υιός ανατραπής γίνει τραγωδοποιός. Κάλιον έσαστε εκθέτην τούτων επί των κτηνών ή να αποθάνουν. Οι χαρακτήρες αυτές της τραγωδίας προαιρούνται του ύψους της διανοίας Σένεκερ.
Τραγωδία εκλαμβάνει τα ιστορίας αυτών. Εστρίτε ταύτας τραγωδοποιού ένεκα. Ούτως ούκαν τη μιμείτε τα σπουδαίας αξίας των ιστοριών τούτων. Τουναντίον, επιμηχάνεται ταύτας και προσμυθοποιεί. Αποκρύπτει την προαίρεση αυτού εν το ενδύματι της συγκατανεωμένης ιστορίας προς επιδείκνυση σατανικά ψευδολογήματα άνευ ηθικών αφηγήσεων. Υπή ο τρόπος κατά προδίδωση του συμπολίτας αυτού. Καταδικαστέα η τυχαία θυσία του τραγωδοποιού.
Asclepius was originally born immortal and was the product of an affair between the god Apollo and immortal Coronis. Apollo killed Coronis after discovering she had been unfaithful and ordered her body burned on a funeral pyre. However, he rescued his unborn child from Coronis's womb before the fire consumed her body. Apollo gave the baby to the centaur Chiron, who raised Asclepius and taught him to practice medicine. Over time, Asclepius became so skilled in the art of healing, he could even raise the dead. This angered Zeus, who sent Asclepius to Hades with a thunderbolt. Apollo retaliated by killing the Cyclopes responsible for making Zeus's thunderbolts. Then, Zeus revived Asclepius, making him immortal and deifying him in the process. In sculptures, pottery, mosaics, and coins, Asclepius was portrayed holding a staff intertwined with a sacred snake. The staff is a symbol of medicine that still endures to this day.
Επικαλούμε σε Μάκαρ, πολιόνιμε, περίπολε και τελετάρχα, Θεόν Πάτερ, δε και Ιε, Σκυπούχε, Πούρε Δημάτορ, Βοτριόκος, Νοδηγέ των Κομμών, Ελθέ Μάκαρ, Μίστε Μαυτρίων και χαρημένος σε Ιε. Μάλλον αυτό δύστημη λέγονε με αυτό.
Πούρε Δημάτορ, Βοτριόκος με οδηγέ των Κομμών, Ελθέ Μάκαρ.
Τραγωδία ανέρεσης εστί. Εστί μιασμός, ιδιόμενος συνακλονίσει την ισορροπία του πνεύματος. Τας γυναίκας διαθέχεστε, χώρο τάφης. Το αυτό και της βουλής.
The Epitadeon was the priest's residence. As the link between patients and the gods, priests were essential to the operation of the sanctuary. They were often elected into the priesthood for one-year periods, but could also buy themselves a position if they were wealthy enough. In addition to interpreting patients' dreams in the Abaton, priests both supervised and performed sacrifices and rituals. During these functions, they were usually clad in white.
Η κατέχεις ωραίων δρυμούς, ελθέ θεά σώτηρα, άγουσα καλούς καρπούς, από γέης ειρήνην τεράτην, καλυπλόκαμον φυγίαν και ω θεά ευωδρόμε, τέμπτης διεστής ωραίων κεφαλάς νόσουστε και άλγη.
Τονία και θηροκτώνε, φυλαγρώτη και λυτηρία, τριμονίτης και πρωτόμεν της ελθέ, η κατέχεις ωραίων τριμμούς, ελθέ, θεά σώτηρα, άγουσα καλούς καρπούς, από γέης ειρήνη, τερατήν καλυπλόκαμον φυγία και ω, θεά εύδρομε, πέμπτης της ωραίων κεφαλάς νόσους τε και άλλη.
Μάλλον το αίμα αυτό λέγω φε. Μάλλον αυτό
βρονέξω.
The Abaton was built in the northern boundary of the sanctuary, where it surrounded a sacred well whose water was believed to have therapeutic properties. The Abaton was where pilgrims went for incubation, or dream rituals. Details of the incubation ritual have been described in unearthed medical steles. They were also noted in Aristophanes' play Plutos, which featured a more comedic view of the process. Incubation was the dream ritual pilgrims experienced in the Abaton. After completing the necessary preliminary rituals, pilgrims were allowed to enter the sacred building, where they lay prone. As they took in the smell of burning incense, the sanctuary's priests extinguished the oil lamps and asked them to sleep in silence. Once they were asleep, Asclepios would appear in their dreams and give his medical advice. The advice included diet and treatment recommendations, as well as requests for specific offerings or religious rituals. Upon waking up, priests interpreted the patient's dreams, unless a patient had been miraculously healed in their sleep. However, if a patient was completely beyond help, they were removed from the Abaton. This was to adhere to a ritual law that stated that no one could die or be born within the building.
I see you've completed the tour. I hope you enjoyed your time in the sanctuary. As you can see, gods and miracles were just as important to the healing process as medicine was. Now, what else would you like to do? Very well. Follow me.
Greetings, Wanderer. It is my pleasure to introduce you to a unique tour. One that won't take you to impressive landmarks or famous battle sites, but through a typical Athenian home. If Olympus is Zeus's sanctuary, then my house is my own. It is a place where I can shelter myself from the noise and stress of city life. For an outgoing people like the Greeks, the house was a refuge of privacy. Inside, they could escape from the constant demands of civic life to enjoy the simple pleasures of family life. Look for me when you are done, and we can discuss the things you've seen. Farewell for now.
The house, or oikos, was a residence for Greek families and their slaves. Contrary to modern houses, which look outward, the Greek household was built to look inward on a courtyard. The courtyard was the house's central fixture. It was the building's main source of daylight and also the location of religious altars dedicated to worship. The building itself was made up of familiar accommodations, including bedrooms, storage rooms, a kitchen, and a living room. Women were generally in charge of tending to the home, which in Greece was called oikonomia, a term that inspired the modern word economy. A pasta was a corridor that connected a house's courtyard to its residential section. Archaeological evidence from the city of Olynthos reveals that pastas were added to Greek home design in the 5th century BCE. Greeks had no qualms about combining their work and their private lives, and many of them worked from home. Artisans like blacksmiths, sculptors, and potters often had workshops in their houses. Some even operated small stores to sell their work. Similarly, doctors were known to treat patients in special offices located in their homes. Women also worked in the house and were responsible for making textiles, as well as producing clothes and supervising weaving, which was carried out by slaves. If the household was wealthy enough, they could even produce a surplus of textiles to sell in times of financial difficulty. The inner courtyard was the nexus of the house. Functionally, it allowed air to circulate and also provided access to most of the rooms. It also sometimes housed a well or a cistern that collected rainwater. In the center of the courtyard was an altar to Zeus Herkios, who served as the protector of the household. Women would often use the space to sew and cook, while children used it as a play area. Furthermore, if the family had pets or animals, the courtyard was where they were allowed to run free. The bathroom was located in the back of the house. Much like today, it was used for cleaning and washing, although the Greeks used chamber pots instead of toilets. Most bathrooms had a luterion that could be filled with water for washing. Mirrors, razors, strigils, and sponges could also be found in the bathroom, along with small vases called arebaloi, which were usually filled with perfume or oil. Greek homes had kitchens where the family's meals were prepared. The Greeks did not often eat meat, except during special occasions like banquets or after sacrifices. They had mainly a grain-based diet, eating staples such as bread, porridge, or a barley cake called maza. They also occasionally ate poultry, fish, and other seafood, as well as fruits, vegetables, goat milk and cheese, and olive oil. Food was cooked on a tripod, or sometimes in a klibanos, which was a sort of mobile oven. Other cooking implements included braziers, mortars and pestles, a spit to hold food over a fire, platters, and frying pans. The family also used the kitchen to store food in containers called pithoi. Symposia were major social institutions in Greece. They were drinking parties held exclusively for men. The party took place in the men's section of the house, the andron, where residents and guests reclined on special couches called klinai. Food was served on low tables set in front of the couches, while wine was placed in a crater in the center of the room. During a symposium, men drank, sang, had philosophical discussions, and played games like kotobos. Musicians, dancers, and even courtesans were often welcomed to attend as well. However, wives and daughters were always excluded. The Pyrgos, or upper stories, was the women's quarter of the house, where they could pursue their activities and observe the city without being seen themselves. The rooftops were also used in a special rite called the Adonia, a private celebration held in honor of Adonis, which was reserved for women. At the beginning of spring, women filled terracotta pots with soil and lettuce seeds, then climbed a ladder to place the pots on the rooftop. These pots served as the women's very own Gardens of Adonis.
Θεά, ευωδρόμε, τέμπλους διωραίων και παλάσσου, νόσουστε και άλλοι